Under the same sun, we laugh, we run. Our world, our home, we share the air. Let's care for it, show we care. Under the same sun, let's show.
Under the Same Sun.
Hello and welcome to Under the Same Sun, the space where we talk about the environment, climate, and how it all connects to our everyday lives. I am Lois Apasambo, and today we are focusing on something very practical, not just the problem, but the solutions, because to be honest, climate change can feel very overwhelming, but there are real things that are being done, and even small actions can make a big difference. So today we'll be talking about climate solutions like renewable energy, energy efficiency, eco-friendly transport. And our guest today is Smith Nwokocha. He is a climate action leader, a development practitioner who also serves as the coordinator at Quest for Growth and Development Foundation. Smith, you're welcome. And thank you for
Thank you so
joining
much,
us.
Adam. Thank you. Thank you.
Here is the sundial.
This is the sundial.
Most parts of Nigeria receive about 5 to 7 hours of strong sunlight every day. That is more than enough to power homes and businesses through solar energy. Yet, many households still depend on petrol and diesel generators, which are not just expensive, but also contribute to air pollution and climate change. Here is something to think about. If more homes switched to solar, it could reduce both electricity costs and carbon emissions at the same time. So, it's not just about the environment, it's also about saving money. Did you know that electric vehicles are almost silent when they move? So beyond saving fuel, they can actually help reduce noise in busy cities. They also have fewer moving parts than regular cars, which means in many cases, less stress when it comes to maintenance.
This is the sundial.
Welcome back and thank you for staying. We still have here Smith Nwokocha. Straight to the conversation. I would like to start by asking, when we talk about climate change solutions, what does that really mean in practical terms, especially for a country like Nigeria?
Okay, yeah. Thank you again for having me. And my opinion would be that when you're looking at solutions, you're looking at something that is possible, something you can, react to and then have positive outcome at the end of the day. So looking at climate solution in the context of Nigerian, you're looking at introducing things like renewable energy, and then other areas of it to mitigate the impact of climate change in our country and even region. We know that climate change is not something that is even far from us. It's something we live with. The problem is something we face. If you go to Bayelsa, you go to rivers, you see the flooding situation, right? You even go to Abuja, Lagos, you see the intense heat, that heat wave, you experience it. You talk about Kano, you see the level of desertification. These existing climate problems or challenges that we are facing. So things like renewable energy, just to mention one of it, which is solar, that is well known, is very environmentally friendly and something that can manage the impact of climate change.
So thank you very much. And I heard you talk about renewable energy and I heard you talk about solar. And I think we'll dwell in some significant time on solar energy, which is a renewable form of energy. And we're seeing what I would call a revolution in, how Nigerians use energy these days. We're beginning to see a lot of people with solar panels on their roofs. So many people are going off the grid, even if they're not totally going off the grid. During the day, they are not on grid and all of that. Now, this is one solution that has been mentioned, right? But how realistic is it for Nigeria to rely solely on solar? Because we know that there are certain things that I'm sure we've not been able to get there, and there are certain things that we're not fully able to do, with solar. But how realistic is it that Nigeria will be able to get to that point where we can rely solely on solar energy?
Okay, yes, I think we are getting closer. We'll still need a bit of time because some of our technicians And even the country stakeholders are yet to understand, the relevance of solar, like in whole. However, Nigeria as a country does not have to wait for, for us to have the national grid and all that to become that perfect, right? And before we begin to solve energy access issue. Now, solar is something that has proven, even over time, to be somewhat efficient when you compare to other sources of energy. You go to some communities, you just mentioned about people being off grid and all that, So you go to some homes, you see how they use solar system, offices, even our government, even the ASO, so to speak, they are switching towards solar. So I mean that is the way to go. That shows you how reliable that can be. However, not the solar on this one. You're not standing alone. You need the battery. Sometimes you also need the inverter. Some of these things helps it to power more, right? So I think the discovery on solar is also growing and advancing as time goes. However, that is the best environmentally friendly option so far. I think it's something we can dwell on. Homes, people are beginning to use it, marketplaces, schools, everywhere. And it's something that is reliable, right? It's not a power system that you wait for, somewhere to switch on power and then they say, okay, we're waiting for this. We cannot power for. No, those things are not there with solar. It is decentralized. You own the source of power. So it gives you power. It gives common people power. It gives them opportunity to use power at their own, liberty. So it has come to stay, and we'll keep exploring the options as time goes on.
So I would like to ask, what are the biggest barriers? Because as much as we're seeing a massive move to the use of solar energy, there are definitely a lot of other people that have not been able to make that move. So what are the biggest barriers that are stopping people from, adopting solar energy? And, what can government do to help this situation?
Solar as it is now, it seems to be a bit expensive, so to speak, because you get to import some of the, equipment and all that, and then sometimes we get it assembly in Nigeria as well. So you see that it's a bit expensive at that level. But when you check the long-term usage, it becomes relatively cheaper, right? For instance, you have a generator, you power it, you buy fuel, over time. You can imagine the cost, even the cost of getting that generator, you can imagine them fueling it over time. You know what it will cost you. But for solar, it's not the case. It seems to be a one-off thing once you get it. So that is why I also want to use this opportunity to appeal to government to, support local manufacturing, give us enabling environment, to operate. So we have technicians, we have manufacturers, bring them together in a room. And then if there's anything tax related, you can give them like tax holiday for those solar related equipment and items, as the case may be. So by so doing it becomes more affordable and more available, because it seems not to be even affordable, even when you have it in stock, but it's not quite affordable. So government should give them, manufacturers and distributors, including technicians, certain level of tax rebate so that it becomes cheaper, and then they can bring more of that. And then encourage local manufacturing of this, encourage SMEs that are in the industry, in the sector, empower them more, and then give them certain some form of orientation and government relief. I think I want to emphasize on that part because it's very important, because a whole lot of tax around importation, and when it even comes to solar, because it seems that it is comparing power to our national grid, so they tend to want to do things that will make people even not to get more of it. So government should reduce the taxing of solar and then encourage more local manufacturing and even the distributorship. And good thing, government is also using solar now, so they see the use and the need, and encourage more of that in all public and private stations. I also have some level of partnership with private sector so that it becomes more available and accessible.
Well, thank you very much. And I think we'll go to something that is a bit controversial, So I think from late last year, entering to this year, the government had put some sort of ban or restriction on the importation of solar panels. And their reason was so that they will boost local production, right? Well, we're beginning to see some sort of controversy among stakeholders who are, suggesting that that is not going to help the situation, saying that, it's a premature ban and restriction, and manufacturers in country have not built the capacity to be able to meet the demands of Nigerians in the country. What's your take on that?
I think to be very honest, I've been following that conversation. I know that yes, it seems to be more like a rumor, so to speak. There has not been an official, ban from federal government of Nigeria to prohibit individuals or business people from using solar, like installation and all that. But there is a rumor around it, and trust me, it will not be friendly. It's not, for me, it's not going to be a welcome development if such even come to bear. It will not be, because you are now discouraging people that are even able to, get access to some of these things, because even to get the solar is quite expensive. So when you have people in the private sector trying to get it and distribute across the nation, I think they should be encouraged, not otherwise. And anything of that come in form of ban will now reduce, their interest and their effort to get this thing done. So I think that shouldn't be the case. The Nigerian government should rethink, if they have that pipeline, they should rethink that. And just like you said, I think it's quite premature at this stage. It's something that we should encourage, because solar tend to be decentralized, tend to be independent, and common people can have access to power once they have solar in place. So I think that the ban thing is not a good narrative, not something that should be encouraged, and that should it shouldn't come. It shouldn't come. If there should be any form of ban, it should be on maybe solar products that government sense or perceive to be not up to standard, right? Then you can put a ban that this particular product or this particular brand of solar is not good for the Nigerian environment, so to speak. So they can look for a way to subsidize it and then work on quality control, not to restrict solar use in the country at all. That will not be quite fair.
I'd like us to talk about eco-friendly transport. And this is because I've been on social media lately and I have seen a lot of people, getting these Chinese cars anyways that are electric. And a lot of people are beginning to think towards that. We're seeing that shift, as much as people are also shifting off-grid, also seeing people getting electric cars. What would it look like for us in Nigeria that we're able to move totally to eco-friendly transport using electric cars?
That would be beautiful. Lois, trust me, that would be beautiful, because if you even think of it, like in Port Harcourt, for instance, the first time some of us we saw the electric vehicle, we were like, wow, everybody had to run out. This is electric vehicle, this is electric. And you look at it's not fuel dependent. So we're talking about when there are fuel scarcity. Okay, now you know how much you buy fuel. Fuel price is quite high. And when there are issues around global or geopolitics of any nature, it will not affect the price for petrol and even other related products. And then that tends to also affect the price of every other item, whether from food to housing to every other thing. There will be price hike. But if we have electric vehicle, for instance, that one, you see how eco-friendly it does not pollute the environment, right? And you're not stopping it. It goes there, move from any location you want it to go. The only thing you might face at a point in time is just maybe to charge the battery, and then you have battery stations. So you just look at the alternatives and work around it. So Nigeria is something that Nigeria need to embrace at mass. I know we have some of this running in some cities and states in our country, but we need to have it in mass and economy. At this point in time, it seems to be a bit expensive, but government can go and, with incentive and all that, subsidies and everything around it, it will become cheaper and available. So if we have a government transport vehicle in different states, let it be electrified. Let it be like electric vehicles or in these states. And you see, if we have more of that, then the dependency for fuel and fuel scarcity and all that will not be there. Even the prices for this fare will be cheaper and better. Then environmentally is friendly. We'll breathe good air, we'll live longer. I mean, everywhere, everybody is happy. That's it. So we need this to happen as soon as possible.
As much as we're beginning to see people, move and start getting electric cars going off grid, let's look at the business perspective and also look at it from the economic perspective for Nigeria, because as much as we're calling for, a move to renewable energy, we're also very aware that our economy is heavily funded by crude oil. Yeah. So how do we balance for us as a country being able to move, and also balance our own economy as a country?
So the truth is this, we have to transition. That's the truth. We have to transition, right? Countries are transitioning towards renewable energy, and we can't stay we have or we have crude in abundance, and that's what we export more, and that is what we depend on in terms of economic revenue for the country. We can't depend on that forever. We need to diversify. And Nigeria still have even the renewable energy potentials. We still have it in abundance. I'm talking about the resources. So why for us to even have a balance, we need to transit. While we are transiting, we just ensure that the process is fair and just, right? In so doing, we'll be able to get the kind of result we can't depend on oil. Is even in 10, 20 years to come, you might have less information about oil. You might not even be hearing much about oil. It will become more of renewable energy, and that will be what will drive economies that will even dictate the world. So Nigeria need to move at that pace. And Nigeria is also moving towards that because we have our energy transition plan already in place. So we're working on that part, right? But we want government to ensure that the process is fair and just while they are transiting. But there is need to transit. So if we start now to transit, it is better for us because we still have the renewable energy resources in abundance in Nigeria and across Africa. So we have a market to also play in.
How can Nigeria tap into this? So as much as, yes, we have a transition plan, we're hoping to, transition. And like you said, Nigeria needs to transition because the world is actually moving to renewable energy. What are the opportunities?
Like I said, is important, right? Nigerian transiting, we're already on the pipeline, we're already on that track. But first thing is to, for instance, formalize the informal transport sector when it comes to eco-friendly transport system, right? We tend to have a transport system that is not well coordinated, if I should use the word, right? Like we are fuel dependent, so we need to move away from that part. But while we are doing that, we also need to have a sort of these digital systems that manages that transition process. So it's not cast on stone, but Nigeria need to also reach out or build a partnership with the developed world. When I mean developed, I'm talking about like the US, China. They need to have some form of partnership to tap from their technical know-how when it comes to using some of this technology, so that we can use that and localize it to our own context, to manage our own outcome. So I think it's a process, for us to switch. But Nigeria, like I said, most of our policy, depends on how government approach it. So I think that government need to have a sort of stakeholder forum where they house civil society organizations that are involved in climate change activities, get traditional rulers of communities that are affected by the impact of climate change, even across board, because it's a Nigerian thing, it's not a particular region thing, right? Get traditional rulers from different regions of Nigeria, get even their own policymakers that are trained in energy transition. Once you get this expert working in line with the National Commission for Climate Change, working in line with them, they can get answers to some of these things. And you see it's not something that would just, but it is a face-to-face process. So you need to house the relevant stakeholders, have an idea of what you want, then have partnership with international organization, because sometimes they also have their interests, right? But once we tap into their technical know-how, we can localize it to suit our environment. I'm sure that with this kind of process, we're able to have the results that we want. So Nigerian government needs to work through the National Commission for Climate Change, house relevant stakeholders and get their thoughts, work out a partnership plan, and then implement it. Because Nigerian problem most of the time is not even policy making, it's policy implementation.
Thank you very much. So there's this thing we call the climate story of the week, and there's just this short story that maybe could speak to people, and then Let me read the story and I'll just like to get your view on it. So we'll name this person Tunde. Tunde had thought he had figured it out. After years of watching the fuel price go up with long hours of having to wait at the filling stations, he decided to get an electric car. For him, it was not just about climate change. It had nothing to do with climate change. For him, it was just lesser money for petrol, lesser queues, right? And no more sudden rising, fuel prices. At first, it really felt like a smart move for him. So sometimes at home, he also got like a plug for the car. So he would plug at home overnight. He would wake up, his car is fully charged. The car, there was no engine noise, no fumes. It was just smooth. He was enjoying cruising around town. And honestly, he really saved a lot. Weeks went by without him having to ever step into a filling station. But then something happened. One afternoon, from his way back home from work, his battery ran lower than expected, and traffic had been very terrible. He started looking for a place to charge, but there wasn't anyone nearby because the charging ports or charging spaces in the town where he was were very limited. What should have been a simple top up turned into hours of sitting and waiting, and that was the first time it made him feel unsure. Then he had a minor issue on his car. It wasn't something serious, but it was now difficult for him to get someone that would fix the electric car. That was another struggle. So the mechanics he trusted did not have the tools, did not have the training to be able to fix his car. So he had to go, further to find ways to fix his car. So for him, the convenience he once felt, started to fade. And Tunde held on for a while. He wanted it to work. But after a few more calls with charging and the stress of maintenance, he made a difficult decision. He sold his car and now he's back to using his petrol car. And so many people, may face some of the issues that Tunde did face because this is like the early phase of electric cars starting in Nigeria. But sometimes this challenge is not just people refusing to change, it's because the entire system, has not given them the opportunity to be able to have that transition. And that's the story of Tunde and for so many other people right now that, may be driving electric cars. Looking at Tunde's story and looking at, circumstances, especially in a country like Nigeria, where, we have more petrol stations, more petrol cars, wanting to transition to using electric cars may have its own downsides, just like Tunde. But what do you think needs to be done? What do you think needs to be put in place for us to be able to have that smooth transition and for people to feel confident enough to buy electric cars and, start using them?
Oh, right. Well, that is quite a touching story from today. But um, I think that the challenge first left from the charging ports, and trust me, is because of the early phase of electric vehicles in Nigeria. We don't have it in mass yet, right? If we have it as much as we have the petrol cars, we might not have faced that kind of challenges, right? Because you have technicians around, like the mechanics for EVs and all that everywhere. And then you have the charging stations. The way we have filling stations all around, we have charging stations. I think that the not to blame, but the higher blame goes to our government because they need to do more to manage this kind of situation. Tunde is just experiencing this at first, right? Because some of those things are not already in place. Let's assume that Tunde visited a filling station that is nearby and they have an EV charging station in the filling station because Nigerian government doesn't even need to start building electric vehicle stations anymore. Just go to every filling stations and have an attachment of the EV stations. So you have a dual. If you're coming for petrol, you go this way. If you're coming for electrical, you go this way. By the time we have that kind of numbers of EV charging stations across the country, Tunde might not have faced that kind of challenge he faced. And then we will now have a lot of technicians or mechanics for EVs all around. So you can just pop up, I'm looking for a technician. It's just a call away or a walk away. He gets one. But unfortunately, because he's still on the early phase, that is why he faced what he faced. And I'm sure even when petrol car was introduced or were introduced in Nigeria in, I think, early 60s or so, right? it was similar thing they face. So if you have a car, you're like the big boy or big girl or big, and then when fuel finish, you now look where to get your gas or fill your petrol. You start looking, scouting and all that. But it was not that one part or everywhere as it is today. So I think that with time, it will progress to a point where we have battery stations all over attached to filling station, which would be my own personal suggestions, and then we can have kind of install charging stations in major cities like Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, and so on and so forth. But if we have that in place, it will be easier for Tunde not to face that kind of this. And then the other part might also be switching from charging stations to more like a solar powered charging station, so that I think that is where technology comes in. Tunde, this will be an advice to the manufacturers of EVs, electric vehicles, to have a mini solar power charging, battery device for the vehicles, so that if there's a breakdown along the road and there is no charging battery station close by, you can use the solar powered mini device to charge the vehicle. So I just feel like with time, some of these shortcomings will be addressed, and then it becomes easier. Imagine that we have public buses, taxis, and delivery vehicles as EV all over the country. That would have been a challenge for Tunde, right? So, and then the financing for this might be a little bit high now, but if government comes in, there could be incentive and the price becomes cheaper, and this thing becomes even more available and affordable. So, lastly, I will say that there's also need to support local assembly and manufacturing in Nigeria, so the price will really, really cut down. I'm sorry about that discussion for what Tunde faced or went through. We hope that I know that by 2030 it will not be the case. Thank you. By then, Nigeria would have switched properly. Yeah.
This 2030 that you called, we hope that it is something that we can achieve, because I've seen ourselves put together targets and we've not been able to meet it. But we hope that with this one we're able to meet it.
All things
Well, yeah. Thank you very much, Smith, for taking out time to be with us on Under the Same Sun. We truly, really appreciate your insight, and it was really very insightful. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure anytime.
Before we go, here are 3 green steps you can take for the week.
Switch to energy-saving habits. Turn off lights and appliances when you're not using them. It sounds basic, but it adds up. Try to reduce generator use where possible, even if it's just for a few hours. If you have access to solar or other alternatives, explore them. Plant something. It could be a tree, a small garden, or even a potted plant. It's a small way to connect with the environment and contribute to a greener space.
That's all we have on Under the Same Sun. See you same time next week. I remain Lois Akpasambo. Do have a great weekend.
Under the Same Sun.